Oh, okay.
Yeah, dude. Thank you so much for coming on. It's Daniel Waclawiw, everyone. And yeah, so can you explain what hyperacusis is and how it affects your daily life?
I guess hyperacusis in a way is a little bit of kind of a broad umbrella term in the sense that it basically means a hearing condition where things sound too loud. Um, my particular form of hyperacusis, some people call it noxacusis, some people call it pain hyperacusis. And basically, what it comes down to is sound causes physical pain. Um, and Yeah, it's one of those things where, sound is literally just everywhere. Um, and it's one of those things that I just never really gave a second thought to um, until I got this condition. And now, simple things just like, water running in a sink or in a shower, um, a door closing, someone setting down a glass, even more subtle things like bed sheets rubbing together or, chewing on something too hard can cause pain that lasts for anywhere from minutes to days, depending on how intense of a sound it was. And it's a pain that for me radiates down my neck, shoulders, back of head. And basically, it's just kind of made my life a lot smaller. I used to travel a lot. Um, And now, most of my life, I pretty much am stuck in my room. I can go downstairs to speak to my friend slash landlord when we've arranged a time when she's not going to be doing anything else. But as you can imagine, it's a balance between how do I live my life and avoid debilitating pain.
Can you describe how this all came out to be?
My bad, man.
It's all good.
All right. I was trying to turn the volume up a little bit and I hit the wrong button.
It's all good,
But
bro.
anyways, yeah, so basically I was just talking on the phone to my friend. Uh there was just this little pedestrian bridge that went over some train tracks, and I was just kind of walking back and forth on it just because it was sort of aesthetically pleasing. It was just a nice little place to walk. And at a certain point, I see I hear and see the lights of like an approaching train. And actually, I thought like, oh, cool. It was all just very sort of like, industrial aesthetic. And there was actually an opportunity for a couple great like snapshots for me to take. So I actually even took pictures with my phone. But what happened is as the train got close, just the sound of the metal on the tracks. It didn't even like you know uh do the horn. It was just the sound of the metal against metal screeching caused this something to just kind of flip in my brain, and all of a sudden that sound was just unbearable. The frequency was super loud, and all of a sudden my own voice started hurting me. um I figured I'd sleep it off. I kept talking to my friend. At a certain point, I'm like, man, I gotta go. This hurts. And long story short, I did not sleep it off. Um, and it kind of gradually worsened uh, to kind of what it is today.
Yeah. It's a terrible condition, hey, and I've experienced it myself, and just every day is agony. And for those of the
Yeah,
people that don't understand or they've never gone through it, it's like this. It seems like you're crazy, right? Like, 'cause how can a sound hurt a person when it's not to a volume like a gunshot, right? Or you're like a lot of people are going through concerts or when they're at the movies. Those sounds are enough to proliferate someone to excruciating pain, to just
yeah,
catapult them in.
debilitating.
Yeah, yeah. So when you first got this, right, did you just think, oh, this is like just a small thing, like this will go away eventually? Or were you just highly anxious and thinking that the world was going to end and this is going to be forever?
Well, I do just want to touch for a second on what you said, and I totally agree. And I'm sorry that you had to go through it, and I'm so happy that you've gotten out because
Yeah,
that's the goal. Um, it's not just like it's not just like a sound is annoying or like irritating. It's pain. It's just like agonizing. Depending on the frequency and the volume. And so, yeah, that's something that unless somebody really takes the time to inquire and learn about it or listen, makes it kind of a very lonely condition. So, yeah, you very aptly described it as I think agonizing is what you said, excruciating. Um, and yeah, so when I first had the symptoms, I honestly wasn't really worried about it. I was like, I'll sleep it off. And then I was like, you know what? I'll give it like a week. And it wasn't getting better. First few days was just my own voice that was bothering me. And then it started being outside sounds. I remember day 4 or 5, I took a shower and it was so incredibly loud. I went to sleep in pain. And that's when I started kind of researching. I went on Reddit. I went to the hyperacusis subreddit. I found that. I think I just looked up sound is too loud, or something like that. And somebody on there basically it was like, when you sprain a muscle, like at first it doesn't hurt that bad. And then it hurts really bad the next couple of days as this is like healing. And then it like relaxes. And I was like, solid. That makes sense. And so I got earplugs because like when I'd go to the grocery store, the shopping cart started being extremely jarring and uncomfortable to listen to. Overhead speakers playing music, that digital audio is just killing me. So I just got little loop earplugs. When I kept going about my life, I was like, yeah, it'll heal, you know, a week, a month, whatever. Like I've dealt with enough chronic health issues that I'm sort of just like I try not to make things more than they are because, life is stressful enough as it is without making it more than it is. So that was my initial attitude. And slowly over time, over about 2 months, I would say, I noticed maybe a couple percent improvement every week. And I was like solid, and I've been dealing, like I said, with some other issues. And so I haven't been working. So it wasn't really a situation where there was like a particular urgency to when I was going to heal. I was like a couple percent a week. I'm like, I can deal with this. And then I had a very stressful dog sitting that caused a flare in my, well, hyperacusis as well as some of the other health issues I have. Fatigue can be one of the symptoms of MCAS, mast cell activation syndrome. And what ended up happening is I got a solid 12 hours of sleep after the dog sitting. Woke up the next day. I'm like, I'm going to go to 7-Eleven, get an iced tea. It's a 5-minute drive. On my way there, I literally fainted. And I my car veered into the path of an oncoming semi truck. I got hit 70 feet, and I was physically, you know, had a nasty bruise, had some sprains, but like I walked away from that essentially unscathed. But the hyperacusis, weirdly, not immediately. I think I was just so shaken up and my body was probably full of adrenaline and all that stuff. But I noticed that over the next couple weeks, my sound tolerance started really to decrease even more. And that's, I guess, when I kind of really started realizing this might be here for a while.
Oh wow. And how long has it been since the that time on the railroad?
I guess that would have been what, July? It was like July 29th or something of last year.
Oh
So
wow.
we're going on, I think, what, it's May, 9 months.
9 months. And you said it's kind of been progressively getting worse.
It's been very non-linear, and without getting into the weeds too much, like when this first started, I didn't really have tinnitus, and now I have reactive tinnitus, and that's something that's unfortunately been getting worse. Where I'll go outside in the woods when there's a break from like the lawn mowing or whatever, and I'll try to get like a little walk in. But even just the breeze and the birds and the sounds, or even my own talking right now, ringing in my ears is increasing. And
And for the listeners that don't know what tinnitus is, what is that?
it's like it's this. I mean, I guess technically speaking, it's sort of a neurologically induced auditory hallucination. It's the sound of ringing in the ears. That's how most people experience it. And I read that somewhere about 17% of people experience tinnitus to some degree, but for many people, it's just very, very kind of low and stable, and just it's just kind of a fixture. It doesn't really impact their life.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
actually had a very low level before, but
well,
there's also other sounds. It can be kind of like squealing. That's my least favorite sound that I get. It's like this brake squealing. And I've heard of people that get music. There's people that get like grinding sounds, Morse code, like all sorts of stuff. So I have several different tones. I got jingle bells, I got brake squealing. So
wow, you don't even
it's
need
a
no need for Spotify anymore.
yeah, exactly.
But yeah,
A
no, I
little chorus.
same way for me where it started on my left ear after being at a party and being too close to the speaker, and then I felt it as soon as I left the party, and then the next day I just my the slamming my car door, just shutting it was I didn't know it at the time, but apparently that's like 110 decibels because I eventually got a decibel meter, and I'm sure you know all this now. I'm sure you've gone through all the trouble to test the
Yeah, I got the
decibel.
app.
Yeah, yeah. For the people that don't know, there's this app called the decibel meter on your that you can get in your phone, and it just essentially tests the environment that is uh within within sound, and it can measure what it's like in the movies or like a gunshot. But yeah, that's anything over 60 decibels though is where a person with hyperacusis can feel, or this is a severe case though, because a lot of people have it maybe just at 90 decibels, but in a on a worst case scenario, their own voice hurts, which is the voice is around 60 decibels. So
Yeah, yeah, they
yeah,
say a conversation is like 60 to 70 decibels.
yeah.
And so, like, I'm having to speak as quietly as I can and remind myself to do so, so that I don't get a pain, delayed pain. So, yeah,
Yeah. And
it's,
how did your
and just imagine
family?
how many things in our daily lives, doors closing, people putting down a glass, God forbid somebody drops something, that's like, there's a lot of things that are much louder than the human voice that we encounter on a day-to-day life and don't even think about.
Yeah. That's why so many people have tinnitus too. And for the majority of the population, they just don't care. They just kind of live their lives. But then there's a subset of the population that hones in on it, and that's all they can think about. And a lot of people view it as their peace being taken away because a lot of people just can't stand that sound. Right. And then on top of that, usually people with hyperacusis have tinnitus. And so it's this like reminder of the pain that you're going through, and it's just endless. And it just, and everything we do is with sound, right? You talk to your loved ones, you hit the gym, when you study, when you go to class, when you're on your phone, right? It's everything. And to have this placed on someone is just drastically reducing their quality of life. Now, how did it uh, go when you told other people about it, your family and friends?
So I'm an introvert, and I've been dealing with chronic illness for a while, which has made sort of keeping up real life relationships difficult for me. So a lot of the people that I speak like uh online, phone as well, and that's something that I have to be a lot more intentional about. It's like, okay, I have a therapy appointment today, so I can't schedule, say a podcast, or do more of my videos, or even like go for a walk or something. And so it is something that's definitely impacted my social relationships. Um, Making new ones, like I have old friends, like I'm Ukrainian, and like I love learning my language, my ancestral language. And so there's like a couple people that I've been chatting with since I've gotten hyperacusis that, I've mentioned it, and it hasn't really impacted the relationship, but at least where I am with it right now, it puts me in a position where, and I try not to live in fear, because I think that human connection is just so important. And as I get older and I've lost a lot of material things in my life, I realize how much those relationships that we have, and how much just the little things like, the sunset, stuff like that are things that bring me real joy. Um, but like, for example, I'm staying with a friend right now. She's pretty supportive as far as, landlords go. I mean, like, she works from home, but we've arranged things in a way where she asks what kind of things were bothering me. If she's doing anything that bothers me, like she slammed the dishwasher the other day, just let it roll shut after she, loaded it. And that was painful for me. And I just told her, and she's like, thanks for letting me know. Um, and so thankfully, the people in my life that I do, speak on the phone with, or meet in real life are understanding, but it takes a toll just emotionally. I get fatigued. a person laughs too loud and like I have to go from speaking regularly to whispering, and they have no idea why I started whispering. They just think my, ears are getting tired, and I'm not going to say, don't laugh again. It sort of just creates this difficult situation where I am putting myself in a vulnerable position when I do spend time around other people, because unless they're living it, and even everybody with hyperacusis is different. They don't know, they don't understand that like them talking is okay, but then if they put a dish down at the same volume as their voice, that can just have me in like really bad pain. And so I do feel in many ways cornered in my room. I try to challenge that notion, go down, talk to my friend, but about half the time I end up coming back up here and nursing my pain. And so it's difficult, I guess I try not to think about it too much, but yeah, it's really hard.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear about that, man, but it's great that you do have people around you that do understand. And it's great that you're part of the hyperacusis community to put your story out there for to give people hope. Because what I found around this community as well is we can get really cynical. Hey, like I've read like the subreddit can get really dark sometimes, and it's really rare to come across a person like you within the subreddit or like the Facebook group where you are, putting yourself out there and you're actually, still deriving meaning and value and connection and still trying in hopes of a cure
Fine.
one day. Uh, and you
Yeah.
you had
I don't
mentioned
know if you've been on Discord either. It gets pretty
I haven't.
even darker on there.
Oh,
It might be
really?
for the best.
Oh,
Yeah.
geez. I know it's the same for tinnitus too. I'd say they're even darker, even though it's not as bad. I don't want to say that the hyperacusis community's problems are worse, but still, like it definitely the mindset you have going into these things can really, really be the difference of okay, like can you get a little bit better or can you get drastically
Yeah, it's
worse,
it's a matter of, are you gonna keep your head above water, or are you gonna let it take you down, Like
Yeah. Because life happens, man, and it's like these things. It is we can chastise ourselves and we can go, why me? Why with this condition? My brain is it this? Is it because of karma? But at the end of the day, you're not alone, right? And there is a solution to this. You just can't give up because I think that's once you let your chronic illnesses, the chronic pain define how who you are, if you let that become you, right? Like, yes, it is a part of you, but you need to actively try to live, right? Of course, you're going to need to have a little bit of a handicap in certain aspects of life you need to explain, but you can't just drop everything and just be a hermit, because that's like the quickest way to just have everything become a catastrophe. And so with through your
I
YouTube
agree with
channel,
you, and walking
yeah.
that line
Mhm.
is has been a very difficult one for me, to be honest, because I have not gone on for a walk in a week, for example, right now. And I know how important that exercise is. I'll pace around the room or whatever. But I've also learned like there's some weeks where I can go out 3, 4 times. You learn to kind of listen to your body. And I think it's like those times when you are able to push it within reason, you know?
Ye-
Like there's some people that say, I don't entirely agree. Some people will say that any sound that's, under 85 decibels can't hurt your auditory system. And there are some people that are like literally just go back to your everyday life. And there's some people now that are wearing earmuffs and earplugs and hiding in literal like closets or bathrooms,
Oh, geez, that's the worst
because they
case
went
scenario,
too
man.
fast.
Yeah.
There's on hyperacusiscentral.org is a wonderful resource where people's stories are shared, mostly the severe people. And there's an entire wall dedicated, you know,
Oh, I've
to the
read many of
people
those stories.
of the people who couldn't keep going. You know, there's even people who've taken their lives because for one reason or another their condition got out of hand. So it can get really bad. I also don't believe, because people get so polarized, right? There's like this other side that's like you have to avoid sound forever. Any discomfort or pain whatsoever means that you're getting worse. Like, I feel really bad for the people for whom that's the case. I've found that I have a baseline that I come back to. If I get a really bad, like, I go out for doctor's appointments and like to get a ride to the pharmacy. That's about it. Um, I am hoping and praying and choosing to believe that my life will be able to get bigger. So I'm all about kind of trusting your gut and kind of like going with your body.
Yeah.
Um,
I feel that. I mean, I fully got better, honestly. I think and this is from a point too where I was
no,
in my
I want
room.
to hear more about how you did it because
Yeah.
it's hell. There's no other
Dude,
way
it's
to put
hell.
it.
I suffered with it for like 2, 3 years. Yeah. And I was at a point where I couldn't go hang out with my friends anymore. Like I went to the gym, I wore earplugs to the gym. I still had to work, but it was excruciating. I was suffering every single day at work. And this is like construction. I was working at this sign company and I was hammering in nails and I was on the forklift, beep, beep, beep. I'd measure the sound, the decibels, and it'd be like 100 decibels, and my ear was right up against it. And I went to the route of, okay, push through and just neglect the pain. This isn't hurting you physically. And that one really fucked me up. Like that one just
Did
made it worse. Like for a sec, it made me better. But then it'd be this constant battle of, okay, I'm feeling better this day. And then this day it'd be excruciating and back and forth. And then I went to
it
the,
has this
yeah,
weird it almost takes on this life of its own where it's this
yeah,
entity almost where
yeah.
you have to kind of learn
Mhm.
how much you can push it before it'll start kind of
Yeah.
like fighting back at you.
Yeah. And I've also gone the route of just overprotecting and just like headphones everywhere and then earplugs, but the loop earplugs. And I found that anytime there was sound, it would make it worse. And so I was just so lost because I had gone to see 3 audiologists and they said all my hearing was fine. I'd gone to see 2 ENTs. They said everything was fine. General doctor said it was fine. I got an MRI, nothing wrong with the structure. Everything was clear. So what was going on? So then I went onto Reddit and I surfed and I just kept looking at the positive stories. How did they do it? And there's this guy that eventually just did it through just relaxation and just stopped viewing the sound as so
Are
imminent
you talking
to.
about Ronnie possibly?
Maybe I'll have to search it up on Reddit and send you the link, but it was crazy. He and this guy was describing his hyperacusis as severe. Like he wasn't able to go out for Christmas and he was just like the wrapping sheets were too much for him. And eventually by him calming himself down and telling him that the sound was gonna be fine. And I did this. I followed his advice and I messaged him on Reddit and it wasn't linear. Like there was just a zigzag, but eventually I did some more meditation. I was prayer in there. I did a lot of exercise, a lot of healing. I protected my ears just enough, but not too much, right? And I'd always constantly hear the decibels. And I I can't say this will work for everyone because there's no actual science that this is just my personal account. This is all anecdotal. I can't say, hey, this will like make you 100% better. But what did it for me was just meditation and just self affirmation that everything was going to be fine, and just prayer, and then lots of sleep, a lot of good connection. Just essentially do, like, going back to what you said, is just do what's good for you and keep following that. And if it's making it worse, maybe give it some time. And if it's getting really out of hand, maybe drop that a little bit, come back to it. But it's just, you hear all this advice, just do the things that are making it better and discard the things that don't. And it sounds so easy, but it's all just
Yeah,
feeling
what
wise,
that
right?
is different for
Yeah. Yeah,
everybody.
no, exactly. So I can't say that the way I got better may be the same for a listener that's listening to it right now or for you. But I am 100% sure that there is a cure for everyone. Maybe I'm just being too optimistic, but I'm positive that everyone out there is a solution for them. And this gets a lot of hate because a lot of, like, every time I'd told people this and I've posted, it always gets downvoted. And there's people that call me just like delusional and say I'm gonna make things worse for people. But I think this is kind of goes in sync with the Hyperacusis Hope channel that you have, right? It's just, you can't lose that hope, because as soon as you lose that hope, what's there to live for? Like,
Yeah, it's one of those things where I can't speak for anybody else because I've only had my own experience with it. I know there were a few things that I did that I knew was probably out of my comfort zone earlier on. One of them was just walking down a road with rough asphalt with cars going by, even in double protection. I wouldn't wear it inside. I knew it was going to be too much for me, and to this day, I still have this brake squealing tinnitus. That said, if I was still as at a certain point, I had to sort of consciously be like, you've had some bad experiences, but you can't allow those experiences to stop you from trying again. You didn't trust your gut that time, but the fact is, like, I don't want to live my whole life hiding from sound. I mean, you really cannot live a normal life like this. And here's the way I look at it. There's some people that have been severe, they've been severe for a long time. I mean, I consider myself moderate to severe. Some people wouldn't even be able to do what we're doing right now.
yeah,
Um,
this is a privilege, right? It's a blessing.
it is. So I try to focus on those things. And the way I look at it is, even if I don't heal, or even if I don't fully heal, it's a lot better to be hopeful and optimistic than it is to just assume this is what the rest of your life is going to be like. And regardless of where you are in your journey, I just think it's so important to try to encourage others and make some sort of meaning of it. And that's kind of why I do my channel. And yeah, I'm optimistic. I'm also angry. I have my days where I'm just like, screw this. Like, this is so painful. I remember last week I had to go to the pharmacy and I had to fix some stuff, ghost prescription. I'm sure people have dealt with it before, where they should have something and they don't. And there was kids screaming, and I'm like, I really should just get out of here. But I'm like, I'm broke. I paid money to get here. I have to pay money to get back. I have to fix this. And for like 3 days after that, I was just laying in bed and my ears were just like, man, You know, it was like more just kind of like, how can we get through today until enough time has passed where I'll fall asleep, you know?
Yeah.
So I make no pretenses that I'm like, you know, some sage or guru or that I'm always optimistic. But I was like, you know, I healed last time. I came back to baseline. I'll probably come back to baseline again. I'll be able to take that walk again. You know, I might have to put it off for another week, but I'll be able to do it. And who knows, maybe that exposure reminded my brain, like, yeah, there are sounds that are louder than like being inside a room, you know? And even though it hurt then, maybe I think it would be foolish of me to go and do the same thing the next day. But I think to make me to then be like, okay, that's it. I'm never going to get in a car again. I think if it heals, it's one of those things where like that's sort of been I think the consensus from for like the I guess you could say kind of like the what's the word I'm looking for? The uh people who are even minded about it, you know, that let yourself recover. Don't push too hard. But if you recover from something, you can probably recover from it again. And yeah, I know I'm just kind of going on because honestly, it is one of those things where each day I'm kind of like assessing, like, am I handling this the right way? And I'm just following that journey as best as I can, you know, and trying to encourage people to stay optimistic. And in doing that, it's helping me accept what's happening and stay optimistic myself.
Yeah. If you think of the worst case scenario that you've ever been in, chances are you probably got over it. And if not, you survived the day that you thought the world was going to end. You survived that day. So maybe you could survive today and the day after tomorrow and the day after tomorrow and hoping just that things would get a little bit better, and then it's recognizing that you have the strength in yourself to just keep on going. It sounds really simple, and that's in within all literature, right? They always tell us, yes, it gets better. And you know what? It does get better, because a lot of people think they get buried sometimes, right? But a lot of time we're planted, we grow to this person that, oh yeah, sure, we've gone through all these a myriad of things, but it's helped us flourish, right? Because without the pain, how would we be able to understand the happiness? Do you hear that when it says recording in progress?
I do, yeah.
Sweet.
I think they do.
Awesome.
It's like a legal thing.
Right. So I can't just catch you, without you hearing it.
Yeah.
Recording. Yeah, dude. So through your YouTube channel, HyperacusisHope, what message do you most want to convey to others dealing with chronic pain?
Well, the way I see it, being hopeful is just the most practical thing to do, right? It's when you're kind of forward thinking, it allows you to make goals and that gives you a reason to want to, you know, keep fighting through. Um, and so, you know, that's kind of the message that I'm trying to put out there. And you know, there is more research being done slowly but surely, you know. I mean, it's a very grassroots effort. I mean, I want to thank you for, you know, even doing a podcast on this because this is how awareness happens, you know, one person at a time, one connection at a time. Um, but you know, there are people that are starting to look into this and hopefully over time we'll have more standardized treatments, especially for those people who are very severe and have not been able to recover. Um, and so, yeah, you know, just I think it just makes the most sense, to be hopeful. So even if you can't find it within yourself emotionally, just think about it pragmatically. Like, being hopeful is gives you the biggest chance for success.
You mentioned you have a lot of other chronic pains and illnesses. Can you tell me about what that journey's been like? And if you don't mind sharing some of those uh, illnesses?
Yeah, so I'm diagnosed with mast cell activation syndrome, which is long story short, I'm like allergic to the world. Um, I'm sensitive to all food. It's just a matter of degree. So there's a couple foods like beef that I can eat, sweet potato within reason, that I have almost no reaction to, that I'm able to like sustain myself with. But gluten, dairy, legumes, nuts, fruits, all those things I have like reactions to. Um, in addition to mold is a huge one, and I don't think people recognize how many buildings and vehicles have mold. It doesn't necessarily have to be like this giant black blob. It can be spores in the AC ducts or in the carpet and stuff like that. Different detergents, colognes, personal care products, vehicle exhaust, all these different things that have also made my world smaller, because it's hard for me to be in a lot of buildings and it's hard for me to be around people who don't understand the things that trigger me. And the other big one I would say is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue disorder where essentially the type I have, the hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, is where your connective tissue and joints are too bendy. And what that has ultimately meant for me is that I have different chronic injuries. I have chronic whiplash, like 50% neck mobility, um, because there's actually a hypermobility in the structures that support my neck. And so my muscles are trying to, make sure that there's no internal damage. And so for me, it's manifested as, I sprain very easily, but I also have a lot of stiffness that really limits my mobility because my body's trying to protect me. Um, yeah, I feel comfortable sharing this. I was actually homeless for close to 3 years uh, after aging out of foster care, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But fatigue with both of those diagnoses I mentioned is a big symptom. And me being able to support myself, I was able to do so, but not doing so paying rent. And so I was actually living out of a vehicle in order to make ends meet and survive, because unfortunately there's not too many resources out there for people who have aged out of foster care. So at a certain point, I wasn't able to make, I guess, sort of the traditional lifestyle work anymore.
Mm.
So that's been a big part of my journey that actually ended when I had that accident that I don't know if I mentioned the accident with the truck. I believe I did. Yeah.
You did, you did.
Um, and that's when that chapter ended. I finally have, after couch surfing for a while, found a place that's relatively quiet that I'm doing my best to sort of just recover from the burnout of it all. So it's been a long journey, no doubt.
How has your experience growing up in foster care and shape your view on family, trust, and support systems?
Yeah, so I know there's people that hear horror stories about foster care, and I'm super grateful that that has not been a part of my life. Um, One thing though that it's basically, a system designed to help raise you until you're old enough, ostensibly, to be able to, function on your own when your home situation is less than ideal. I actually called Child Protective Services on my parents, which, I mean, I don't have any statistics, but I had a lot of guilt and conflict about that for a long time. I don't think that's super common, but you know, um, looking back, I made the decision I needed to make. Um, so I kind of had I guess, typical experience, although it was unfortunately emotionally abusive. I believe my parents tried their best, as I've gotten older, but sometimes hurt people, as they say. Um, and these days, foster care itself, they didn't give me a whole lot of tools, but I didn't have, I just kind of like pushed it all aside, like the whole looming thing of like I'm gonna have to be independent eventually. They also, I wrote a paper about this in community college. They foster kids get 800% more medication than the general population, and really there's just a lack of resources for like really proper like trauma informed therapy and stuff like that. Um, and so they just throw a bunch of meds at you, and then wish you luck. When thankfully in my state it's a 21. So it was fairly uneventful, but when I left foster care, it really made me realize how important to learn to ask for help. And I really wish that that's something that it was a journey I had to go through, but I really wish that I had been able to be vulnerable enough earlier on in order to recognize that I was not at all prepared for, after all that trauma and just trying to kind of catch my breath. And next thing the years fly by and uh, I'm on my own, you know. Um, and as far as family goes, like family isn't necessarily the people who you're blood related to. It's the people who really are there for you in your time of need and allow you to be yourself and encourage you to be yourself and encourage you to succeed, and I have people in my life who have good words for me, which I appreciate. And a lot of people, that's all they have to offer. And I've had other people at different points in my journey that have, given me a home for some time. And, those actions, I mean, nobody owes me anything, but it means a lot. And it's helped me heal to see that there are people, including today, you know, who, it's not forever, but right now, despite my unemployment, I have a place to stay and somebody who actively, encourages me as best as they can and believes me, about the hyperacusis and does their best to accommodate me. And without that human connection, I wouldn't be here anymore. I can tell you that much. There's been some angels along the way for sure.
Yeah. So, with in regards to those key people or moments during your time in foster care, can you elaborate on how that has helped you build your resilience, and if you don't mind recognizing those people?
One person was my therapist. I was excuse me, I was hooked up with a therapist through a nonprofit for foster kids. I've been seeing her for going on 12 years at this point. We meet remotely. Um, and just having somebody be there that entire time, just that presence of somebody who's always there every week, no matter what. It's modeled to me something that I really didn't get at home, and it's something that I'm learning to not seek external validation as much. I'm human, and so there's only so far that I can push that. And so I'm sort of in the process though of learning to kind of give that love and validation and drive to myself, and having my therapist has been instrumental. Um, my foster mom, we still talk. I guess I'm older now, so the dynamic's a little different. But it was not just about the money for her. She really cared and she tried. And a social worker, even, that I had through it was my case was contracted out to a third party agency that the state was paying um, to administer my case. But that social worker was great. Um, I still had to go through my own journey. I do wish that there had been more trauma informed therapy available and that I had understood more than I needed it. But I think that's one of those things that, sometimes we kind of just have to take our own paths to find our way home, which I'm trying to do. And it's and I mean that quite literally. What is home? Where is home? I've lived so many places, uh, ranging from a couple months to a couple years. I'm 29 now, almost 30. So, it's been a while since I aged out.
Yeah, you mentioned that you had to call the police and your own parents, and this is at the age of 14. Uh, do you mind talking about that or?
No, I don't. I guess like the nuts and the bolts of it is my father and my mom just kind of went along with it. Was very controlling to the point of it being just inappropriate. Um,
Like, were they, wanting you to just stay home when you wanted to go outside, or did they just
in
not
a
listen to you?
sense, yes. Extremely strict. So, for example, I'd go sneak out and hang out with some friends. Uh, and like not even up to anything. I was a nerd, man. I was like getting like straight A's. But I listened to Eminem, for example, and my father absolutely hated that. They're very strictly religious, and I know plenty of really cool religious people, but so it's not the religion, but I think my father kind of hid behind the religion because in many ways he was afraid of the world. And so by controlling my beliefs and controlling me, I think that's how he was trying to find sort of a sense of safety and security. And I was just the type of person, I was a free spirit. I mean, yeah, I did a couple dumb things, but I wasn't a bad kid. And I finally believe that.
Yeah, it's suffocating, man.
Um,
And what was wrong with "Ass Like That" by Eminem? Like, that was such a good song. Why wouldn't your dad vibe with that?
I don't know, man. It's just a certain
Mhm.
my it was kind of how I dealt with my emotions of being so controlled because I'd sneak out and then I'd tell them I went with my friends and they're like, no, what did you really do? You know? And I was like, I was with my friends, they wouldn't believe me, so they'd like take my door off, you know, and it just spiraled into this thing where they like think I'm this monster when it's like I'm a kid who listens to music with cuss words, you
Yeah.
know, and
And then it
like
built up to you calling the cops on them. How did
so
this?
what ultimately happened is I came out as gay, and uh, my father at that point, total coincidence according to him, decides to send me to a Christian boarding school in Texas for an indeterminate period of time. And, you know, I talked to the admissions person and they were asking me all these intrusive questions about, you know, my sexuality and all these things. And
Oh, what the fuck? That's messed.
my understanding was that, like, this place was meant to change me and kind of crush who I was, you know? And I realized that even if I didn't like physically kill myself, like that I'm just being real. Like, you know, I just felt like I had nothing to lose. I felt like that place was gonna just crush my soul. And so ultimately I decided it was a place where, you know, you couldn't have like access with the outside world. It was very much not something that sounded like it would be good. So I called CPS and they ultimately looked into it and recognized that I needed some support. You know, I needed some therapy, but I certainly did not need to be sent to that place. In fact, I'm super grateful I wasn't because, you know, I have a feeling that that place could have been very hurtful.
Yeah.
You hear stories about places like that. You
Yeah.
know, apparently my dad, he made the mistake of telling me that he had hired a private jet with security guards and that they were going to take me whether I wanted to or not. You know, so it was this all like, you know, bring in the big guns, show of force, you know, we'll show you who's boss. And because he told me 3 days before I was due to go, I was able to make that call, and then the court put an injunction while they did the investigation. So that's the story.
Man, I'm sorry to hear you had to go through that. And just, yeah, it's great that you got separated from that because that could have been fatal for you. And it's great that you'd had a life full of meaning and still carrying hope in your heart. And even amidst all the chronic pain and illnesses and the abuse that you've endured, I don't think I sense you feeling like a victim. You know, I sense a person that's gone through a lot and still comes out of it with a positive lens. And you're honest about it, and you recognize that there are the parts in your life, there are days, even weeks, where you do become a little bit gloomy, cynical, but still, more often than not, you still carry the lens of half cup full instead of empty, which a lot of people, it's so easy in this world to be, caught up in the muck and the mire of just the horrors of the world and just being rejected and having chronic pain and illnesses, and just that morphs our reality into a very dark place. But
Yeah.
I'm happy to hear that you're still trying and you're still going forward and trying to live your life, even with hyperacusis and being a foster kid and being homeless for 3 years, you said? Wow. And what advice would you give to young people currently in foster care who might be struggling to find a sense of stability or purpose?
Yeah, to anybody in foster care and anybody who's even not in foster care, but is living in a situation where they don't feel valued or that things aren't stable, I would just say look for the people around you who are there to help you. And this could be anything from somebody who could help you escape a bad situation to your guidance counselor at school. Make a plan, have goals, because honestly, like, I was just mentally in this sort of survival mode thing, even in foster care, you know? Um, there was so much like emotional stuff that I just had never, like, a sort of tenderness and unconditional love that I think everybody really needs to thrive that I had never gotten. And so I don't blame myself for being in that survival mode, but make plans, prepare, because life is going to keep going whether you do or not. And it's a lot better to, whether it's a business or, because I had like a lawn care business at one point. I had a pet sitting business. I wish I had sort of kept that up instead of sort of allowing life to just go by, having people rescue me, you know, and I'm glad that there are people that let me stay, but I could have used that time more wisely. And so it's just believe that you're worth it. I think that's how I would sum all that up, and then start making those plans because life is going to keep going either way.
Yeah, well said. Like the sun is gonna rise in the east, set in the west every single day, and whether you do the things that make you feel whole and fulfilled or not, this time's still gonna run forward. And you had mentioned that there's some regrets in your past. I think you still made the best out of it though, because with the resources that you had at that time, you made the best out of it, and still using that information, looking back and still seeing kind of the silver lining and still choosing to move forward. I think that's ultimately what's made the difference, right? And thank you for sharing all that. Now, you still have a lot of meaning and drive for self improvement. Living with chronic conditions, how have you found ways to pursue self improvement without falling into burnout?
This is a super good question. And to be honest with you, I don't know that I have. I'm very much, my life has been survival mode, you know, for as long as I can remember. And so even though I know logically that, like, you know, I've been in this, laying in this bed to sleep for several months, and I'm also going to be, I have the next several months and probably longer because my friend is a very caring person who's really trying to help me out, that I have this opportunity here. My mind is still not feeling like it's safe, you know? And so I'm learning to sort of just calm down and be in the moment and realize the best I can do is work with what I have. I just got denied for disability, which means I'm going to have to find some sort of online work. And I want to, like, you know, I did this one interview already for my channel. I have like three more lined up. And I was just so incredibly overwhelmed. I was even nervous about this one because I didn't know where my head was at. But, you know, there's something about once you actually start doing it, it's almost like the anticipation is worse than the actual action.
Yeah, dude, the
Um,
antidote to just anxious thought is action. Because we
that's a
ruminate,
great way to put it.
we think of all these things that could happen, that might happen, and it doesn't happen. It just goes smoothly a lot of the time. Or even with excitement, we think that things will be better than they are. And so they did a study with, I think, people, they asked college students to measure their happiness from like getting ready to go out and then having uh the actually attending the event and then arriving back, and then they were asked at which points they felt the happiest, and usually it's the times when they were getting ready. And this works well with us when we're suffering too, when we're in anxious thought, is we suffer the most right before it happens, because during it it's like it's not that bad. It's not that bad.
Yeah, not
Yeah,
that good, but not that
yeah,
bad, right?
yeah.
I guess it goes both ways.
Yeah. What practices or mindsets that have helped you find meaning even through the pain and adversity?
I wish I could say I had any sort of like routine or practice or anything, but to be honest, I'm very much sort of I have ADHD. I'm very much averse to routine, despite how it's probably good for me. But with my health issues, I got days where I don't get up till 5 p.m. Realistically, like I just try to sort of take things a day at a time, make the best of things. And I am a spiritual person, I do believe there is a sort of like method to the madness. Um, I wish there wasn't so much madness sometimes, but I don't know. I sort of have this sort of faith and belief. I don't know exactly in what or in who, but I sort of just, I try to stay, I try to stay connected in every sense of the word to people and to life. It could be as simple as just looking out the window, even if I can't make it outside that day, watching the deer come. I live right by the edge of the woods. I'm very fortunate, just because it's beautiful and also because of the hyperacusis. I mean, you'd be amazed how many ways people find ways to make sound. um, but yeah, just staying connected and tapped into life, because I don't know about everybody. I know there's some people who are very good at just and content with just kind of maintaining status quo. I don't even want to call it being stagnant because for them, maybe that's just their Zen spot, But I know for me, I either have to be moving towards life or I start just kind of the voices from my past and the depression and stuff kind of starts taking me over. So I have to keep moving. I really don't have much of a choice and it's exhausting sometimes. And I got to tell myself it's okay to kind of take a break, or even a backslide doesn't necessarily mean, it's the end of the world. It just means that you need a break.
Yeah. What does success or growth look like to you now compared to earlier stages in your life?
Well, at this point, when I was younger, I had this idea that, and I know I have a lot of potential. And the fact is, like, I'm trying to embrace the unknown and with excitement, what is saying yes to the people asking me to be on podcasts. I think this is my third or fourth like podcast appearance,
Oh,
right?
there you
So
go.
like that's pretty cool. Um and it's actually like it's led to like people knowing me and some cool like connections, conversations, and even some help when I least expected it. So if I just keep this momentum going, who knows what'll happen. So I guess my whole thing is like, who knows? Maybe I will do something big, but I'm not that's not the goal anymore. I've realized life is there's only one destination, right? It's the journey. The journey is the destination. That's kind of the understanding that I've come to. And I don't know, for me it's all about the inner journey. I don't try to compare myself to other people. I try, and the only person I'm competing with is myself, and there's no way to win or lose that.
Dude, yeah, dude, I appreciate you and thank you so much for coming on the long-term podcast, bro. It's been a pleasure to hear about your stories, the trials and tribulations, and still you stand strong, right? Despite the chaos that has, run rampant, it seems like you still find the silver lining and you still try to be thankful and you're filled with gratitude. And it's great what you're doing, spreading the story out there and being so open. It's really brave. It's courageous. And yeah, dude,
Thanks.
you're
I
changing lots of lives
appreciate the
out there.
kind words, and I appreciate the opportunity to connect with you and to share all this. And yeah, I mean, like just giving a voice to hyperacusis, and also just to share my story. Um, and if it touches just one person, we did something right.
Yeah, bro. There's one person listening to this, at least one. I mean, maybe it might be just my mom, but you know, at least one person where they take some positive away from this.
Yeah, if y'all have made it to this point, y'all are rock stars.
Yeah, no, exactly. Who has the attention span these days, hey? With all the TikToks and the reels. I'll make a bunch of clips for this too, so no worries. For the people that that can't stand an hour conversation, then clips will do.
I may be a little guilty of that myself sometimes.
Me too, dude. I spent a couple hours scrolling yesterday, man. It was really bad. I'm not proud of myself for that. But hey, we're not perfect, So
Nobody's perfect.
yeah, dude. And
No, and
for
I,
the
and I love what you're doing, man.
yeah.
Like, we are two people coming together to make this podcast, but you're the one that made it happen. And it's just great that you're sharing people's stories, and I wish you a lot of success as well, moving forward. And who knows, maybe we'll do like a reunion or something one of these days.
Oh, bro, yeah, we're connected now. I know your YouTube, and then that's HyperacusisHope, right? For everybody that
Yeah,
wants to follow
HyperacusisHope.
Daniel.
Um, it's pretty much the probably biggest hyperacusis channel out there, and I mean, it didn't take much to get there, but if you search it, you can find it.
Yeah, bro.
Um, it's very niche, and I'm so touched that people have been finding those videos meaningful, and that it's making a difference. Because on my worst day, I can be like, "Hey, somebody just left me a comment. Thank you so much. Keep going. This helps me not feel so alone." And I'm like it makes me cry sometimes. It's like it really it makes a difference. Still working on the image for it. It's this AI generated ear in like cupped
Dude, I
hands, and
like
it
it.
has
I
a
vibe with
little
it.
bit of kind of like dismembered ear vibes, but I haven't been able to come up with
Yeah,
anything better yet.
yeah.
But yeah, Hyperacusis Hope on YouTube.
Yeah, people that just see that they don't know anything about hyperacusis be like, is this like an ear amputee sort?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And
Um,
then yeah.
and then I also am going to plug the Canary Uncaged, which is a channel where it's kind of fallen by the wayside, where I kind of followed more of my chronic illness journey and my car living journey. And so, if anybody wants to learn a little bit more about that, that's on there as well.
Sweet, sweet man. And as always, to everyone listening and watching, there is a place for you in this chaotic world. Never lose hope, strengthen your faith, and keep it long term. Daniel Vaclawiw, everyone. Peace. And then yeah, man,
Peace, y'all.
that's it.